The more you listen, the more you know. This is Good Politics with Dr. Wilson and Adam Whiteman.
All right, welcome back.
One of the things I want to get into is the politics of memory. There is this concept in political science where we talk about the politics of memory. And the way it works is how people remember things affects constituencies. You know, how a constituency will remember an event. Sometimes they'll want to remember it in a way that
Wasn't necessarily the truth.
well, we don't say it that way because that's not the way to say it. We don't look at politics of memory in terms of truth, Adam. We look at it in terms of perception. That's a fair way to do it.
Okay.
So sometimes what will happen is constituencies will perceive history in a certain way, and the people living today who weren't living back then will then, that affects the politics of what gets asserted in the political marketplace. And this is a subject, it's not me saying this is a subject in political science. It's called the politics of memory. Let me give you a simple example. The Mueller report. You know, you have this interesting thing right now where you've got information bubble. You know, you've got an alpha stream, a beta stream. There's certain media platforms that are constantly giving you negative Trump information, and then the other side is not doing that. They're giving you something else. And so you have this really interesting thing where the truth that you want can't be given to you. And it's not so much the truth that you want, it's how to perceive the reality. You know, so let me give you this quick example. Let's say there's a family, and it has two groups of parents, right? Because the people are joining, you got in-laws. And let's say in the family, something happens. Let's say in that marriage, there's, let's say an affair or something, or there's going to be a divorce. Okay, so there are facts that constitute what happened. Now, what happens is one side will say, oh, well, I think it's this person's fault. And then you go to the other side and they'll say, oh, well, I think it's that person's fault. This is what you need.
Framework.
It's how they want to perceive what happened. This is called political perception. Now, what I want to do to talk about politics of memory, and by the way, I brought up the Mueller report. If you talk to Democrats about what was the Mueller report, what was it all about, they're going to have it. They already have a different political memory than the Republicans. By the way, right here at Wright State, if you talk about the strike, there'll be two different political memories of what to emphasize or what to perceive in that. And that's the way it works. If you talk about the Horowitz report, this is something we haven't gone over. The report came out, the IG's report. We never followed up on that. Hope we're not going to. It's a 400-page report, and I don't really want to read the whole thing. But the interesting thing about that IG report that came out, the Horowitz report, that's the same thing. If you talk to the Fox News people, hey, what did that say? They have a memory of that is totally different than what you're hearing among Democrats who talk about that report. So this is an interesting phenomenon. I'm trying to tell you it's getting worse. And what we're going to do is apply this to the impeachment. And to hear that, let's hear clip 5 from Sherrod Brown.
The president did something Richard Nixon never even did, and that is he solicited a bribe from a foreign country and to help his own campaign. What's to stop him from trying to to do more things to steal the election and more things that can damage this democracy? I think the most important thing, where do we go from here, is how do we rein in a president who tried to steal an election, solicited a foreign power, and fundamentally got away with it because people in his party seem to have lost their courage and lost their spine and need to grow a spine. And
a lot of very suggestive wording there. I mean, he's saying that Nixon never even did that, as if Trump is worse than Nixon. Also, that Trump supporters don't have a spine, like they're not standing up for justice and they're not defending democracy. That's kind of his political memory, is what you're saying.
Exactly. Here's what I would take from it. This is asking him after the acquittal, after the vote's taken, after it's over with, and you go and you ask him, so what is this? Well, he got away with it. What did he get away with? He was trying to steal an election, steal democracy. That's like a narrative, a literature kind of framework kind of thing. It's like a story kind of thing. They're trying to steal an election. Right. And he says also, he was soliciting a bribe from a foreign country, and that the other side just doesn't have a spine. In other words, counter perspective here is a problem. If there is a counter perspective, the other people are misbehaving. All right, so that's rather interesting that's going to be the way that he remembers it. I want to bring some balance here, because sometimes people don't understand what political perception is. They think that this is a question of what's true and what's false, rather than how to perceive what is happening. And what I want to do is provide a counterbalance, the counter perspective to what Sherrod Brown thinks here about the Trump behavior. I think that my liberal friends never came to terms with one basic thing out of this phone call, out of the Trump thing. they never came to terms with the fact that the ultimate objective of what Trump wanted really wasn't all that big of a deal. Democrats never came to terms with the fact that the ultimate objective was what it was. When you run for president, things are supposed to get vetted. You look more closely at the vetting. The presidency is the highest vetted office. Everything is vet-worthy. When you run for office, they look at things you've done years and years and years and years ago. They look at everything you've done. It's the most vet-worthy office. And all that Trump is saying is this should be vetted. You know, there's this public controversy in the public record about this Shokin thing. It has two different narratives, and even if your claim is that the other narrative isn't worth it, that doesn't mean it's not worth vetting it. Everything gets vetted. Everything gets vetted. I mean, and let's do it this way. How can you get it vetted other than by asking Ukraine, democratically elected government, to do the vetting? You know, that's like asking them to do a Mueller report. Is there anything wrong with sitting there saying as a public policy matter,
we want more information.
We want more information. We want you to cooperate because you say that you're straight and narrow. You're on the straight and narrow. And the truth is, we don't think that this other side of the story has gotten vetted. And why don't you vet this thing and see if there is something there? I mean, what would have been Trump's choices for vetting the Biden thing? His only choice would have been to use private sources. For example, Hillary Clinton did that. There were things about Trump's relationship with Russia that Hillary thought needed vetting in the 2016 campaign. And what she did is hired a private research firm that created the Steele dossier, and supposedly that had some misinformation in it. But then that went to foreign sources and to try to get it. Trump did try to use a private source. He tried to use his private attorney, Rudy Giuliani.
That's why they're arguing that it's influencing election. It would have been okay if he just used Rudy Giuliani to investigate.
No, they would have complained then too. And if he would have hired a private research firm, if he would have hired a research firm to do it, they would still say that my point to you is that this concept of meddling in an election is a political perception. That's all I'm saying to you. You know, it's like the in-laws. You know, if there's some sort of a thing that happens in the marriage, the one set of parents might say, well, it's his fault, and the other parents will say, no, it's her fault. I mean, so like this is what this is. I'm saying to you that this is political perception. The one side says he's stealing an election, and the other side says he wants sunshine. He wants a matter of public controversy vetted by a democratically elected government.
So he suspended the aid. I remember talking about him delaying it. Isn't that a problem?
We're going to get into the aid very quickly. To hear that, let's play Lindsey Graham, clip number 6.
Now here's abuse of power. Are you listening? They were going to remove the President of the United States because he suspended military aid to the Ukraine for a short period of time to leverage an investigation that never occurred. They got the money, and there was no investigation, and they were going to deny the American people the right to pick their own president based on that.
He says that he suspended aid for a short period of time. It was a delay. What are some of the takeaways?
The aid thing is actually interesting. That's really what got Trump in trouble. It's not just that he wanted the thing vetted, but that there was this idea that the aid wasn't going to go out unless certain things happened. But let me give you these facts. The hook never gets communicated. He never tells Zelensky, if you don't do this, you're not going to get the aid. The aid has to go out no matter what. This is a key premise, and I don't think people ever understood this. The aid has to go out no matter what, because if it doesn't, the president has to prepare rescission papers, in which case the Congress can still overrule him. Rescission papers is where you try to cancel aid, and that's already been appropriated. So he doesn't ever go for rescission papers. Basically, he's just jerking around the aid for about a month. And that takes it right out of, instead of it being bribery, it makes it being bluffing. It makes him as a control freak, a braggadocio, the kind of person who says, "Oh, I've got the power," or whatever. You know, like you're gonna get your aid a little bit later. You know, it's like he's a 5-year-old, not like he's a robber. And so that was a key thing. The aid was going on. Now, here's the thing I want you to understand: the aid did go out. There wasn't any investigation. The Zelensky prosecutor announced he was going to audit the Shokin files. Your viewers don't know this. I want to give this to you now. We had told you before that the Zelensky had this new prosecutor, and he said, okay, we're going to audit the Shokin files. And when they said they're going to audit the Shokin files, they never mentioned Biden by name. They said anything, which would include Burisma. And then, do you know what happened? This is what the listeners don't know. The Ukraine parliament didn't fund it. So the Ukraine parliament didn't fund it because they don't want to favor either side. They want to stay neutral. They still want to get the aid money, and they want to make sure that they're not making either side mad. You don't want to throw in with one side. That's not good chessboard strategy. You want to just say, look, we want to stay out of this. And also, by the way, with these oligarchs and the way that they do it over there, it's probably dangerous. Like to start taking sides about,
Right.
you know, and that's the big political mess for them. Now, here's the other thing. Here's the rest of the story. Even though there wasn't really any great investigation here, the aid got reappropriated. And that's another little thing people don't know. Trump had to decide whether to give the aid next year. It's been appropriated, same amount of money. It's going to go out next year. And here's something else that people don't know. Congress gave up the right to make the aid go out within 45 days. Congress was in budget negotiations saying the next time we do this Ukraine aid, you got to spend it quickly. And they gave that up. So basically, you have an appropriated amount, which could this summer, we could do the same thing could happen.
Did they talk about this? Did they have this issue on their table and they passed? They said, okay, well, we could force the hand of the president. And then they said, no, well, it's probably best we don't do that.
What happens is it's a budget negotiation. And the law, the text in the law allows the aid not to go out until the fiscal year expires. It gives the president a window to play with. Now, the GAO doesn't like this and thinks it's wrong, but OMB thinks that it's fine. And because there was this dispute back and forth, somebody in the budget negotiations over in December, just last month, tried to say, okay, in our negotiations, we want you to pay the foreign aid quickly. And they were going to put new language. That's the key, new language, because the OMB was saying the language allows us. How do you change the law? Change the language. And they put that out there. They said, we're going to have new language. And the president said this, look, I have some discretion about when this aid goes out, and you're trying to take that from me. And I'm going to tell you right now, we're not going to give you that negotiations. We're going to have a government shutdown. We're not going to agree to the budget. And the Democrats said, okay, we'll go ahead and do this agreement because that's not that big of an issue to us. They got other things instead of that. In negotiation, you prioritize what's big. The president wanted things. Democrats want things. They get together with a budget agreement. And this business about aid, the language stays the same. There's no 45-day requirement. So, So here, that's the thing that I want to tell you about the aid. People say the aid was such a big deal. So this is another reason why
it wasn't even a big deal to the Democrats or the Democratic congressmen, anyways.
People forget that when the Mueller report was going on, 3 senators sent a letter to Ukraine basically saying this: if you want aid from us, you'd better make sure that you cooperate with the Mueller investigation. But why? Well, because we're investigating something here that that you might have some information on, and we expect you to be above board on this because this is so that's an effort to try to get at your opponent, isn't it? These Democratic senators want to try to make sure this Mueller report comes out, right? So this is just normal stuff. What I'm trying to tell you is that this is based on political perception.
Yeah.
That's what my key thesis is over and over and over again. In order to see someone stealing an election or behaving like Nixon, or this is just like Watergate, you have to have political perception. You have to be one of the in-laws. All right, this is what this is. Okay, right. It's political perception, and it affects political memory, because I have to tell you, these people will probably be saying this 10 years later. Well, that Trump tried to steal that election. I mean, that's what they'll be saying.
Yeah, like in the divorced family,
right.
We're kind of addressing it like a divorce attorney would, or maybe one of the courts. Right. We're addressing it like divorce court. We're focusing on the facts. Here they are.
I like what you say. You say what we're doing. This is actually interesting. People may say, sometimes you have shows that seem to argue in favor of Trump. Well, that's not my fault. They are the ones doing the impeachment. So am I supposed to not cover it? So the thing about this is, what we're trying to do is not be in this game. We're like Al Michaels in the booth. I'm just showing what's happening in the game.
Call the facts as they happen.
I mean, I'm just calling the game. So I have taken the position attitudinally that I'm not going to get into this Trump thing. I don't even tell my students this. And I mean, no one has asked me. But I just basically have taken my hands off this. I'm not going to worry about whether this guy wins or loses. I'm going to be the only person who's just going to not worry about this sort of thing. From prior...
Disinterested, yeah.
Well, from prior shows what gets me going. I'm more concerned with what's happening inside the Democratic Party, whether they go in that Bernie direction. I don't like that. And so that's the elections that I feel political passion about. If you ask me about that, I feel passionate about. But on this Trump election, I kind of just have taken my hands off this thing.
Well, your eyes are on it, your hands are off.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I really feel like what we're trying to do here is simply sit in a football booth, like it's Monday Night Football, and the teams are playing, and it's a big rivalry, and it's our job not to be, in this case, a Steelers fan or a Ravens fan.
things is, so as an aside, did you know we were working together for quite a long time, talking just about politics, and I still had no idea what your political allegiance was.
Yeah.
I had no idea because, just like you said, you're going to address things without some passion for what your political belief is, but you're going to call the plays. You're calling the game. You're addressing it like a judge would.
All right, very good.
Politics without allegiance. You're listening to Good Politics with Dr. Wilson and Adam Whiteman.